Hi, this is Dawn at the Lake, and this is Lakeside Quilt Making Arts. Being Wednesday, that means it is Comfort in the Waiting Day. Hashtag Avery Quilts. Now, if you remember back to our last video where we were working on this particular donation quilt, you know that we were working out this insignia issue here that was being created as a secondary design. And I think we succeeded at doing that. I was really pleased with how it worked out. Then last night, I pieced all 6 of them together, and I was really pleased with how they looked. So we're ready now to put on an inner border to go here and there. We had at one time looked at using these. Remember those? And I keep on trying to place it in this quilt. But even though this is a nice graphic and would probably be a nice border, a nice binding for some quilt, I don't think it suits this quilt. There's just so much life, so much volume, so much saturation, so much color in this. I just don't see it working. I could be wrong. I might still try to incorporate them, but not for now. I'm going to pass on those. And what I'm going to stick to, though, is a high contrast, which is just putting in a white border. It does look good. Of course, this right here is just the back of the design board. So I think if I narrow that, it doesn't need to be a good, it's probably 2 inches or so. It doesn't have to be that wide. I think something smaller, like an inch, would be nice. I might play with that a little bit. I did measure my length and width. Each of the blocks came out to 16 inches. Well, this one in the middle is finished, so it's 16 inches. And then the ones on the sides are 16 1/4 each. So we have 48.5 inches this way, and we have 32.5 this way. So that tells me how much of my fabric that I need to cut to make that inner border. I just got to figure out how wide to make it. So we can take a look at it and see that we're roughly, let's just figure out how much it is. Yeah, just over 2, so 2 1/4 inches. I kind of feel like it would look good with just an inch. So I want to play with that. So let's take this whole inner strip, since it is all pieced together now, and move it over. I put the pins in for extra measure whenever there's so much weight here. I like that. I like that. That gives enough of a break between the inner medallion, if you will. And I don't know, can you consider it a medallion when it's rectangular like that, or would you refer to it as just the body of the quilt versus the inner and outer borders? I don't know. If I refer to it as a medallion, are the quilt police going to come get me? So I like that. I like having an inch. It's probably an inch. Let's see, where did that tape measure go? It's 1 3/4 inches. So what do I need? I need another 1/2 inch. So I need I need to cut my strips 2 1/4 inches. So I have another thought about things. Not that I'm trying to get too far ahead of myself, but you see this guy that we made when we were first playing around with this quilt? I made this square, and then the square came as part of the kit, and then I framed it out because we were playing around with doing a 4-patch, replacing one of these with like a 4-patch or something like that. Well, I like it. I like the way it kind of breaks things up. And originally I was thinking about using them, making 3 more and putting them as cornerstones. So where the vertical border meets the horizontal border, and then you break it up by putting something in each of the 4 northeast, southwest point. Okay, that's too predictable. I want to do something that helps to create movement around the quilt. So I'm thinking about leaving it pretty much there and creating 3 more to do in a similar place, but maybe not evenly distributed. Maybe a little bit. So in other words, not right here. Don't know, you can't see far enough down. Anyway, not in the exact same spot all the way around. We'll see about that when we get to it. But first things first, I get busy cutting my strip. I do have some white fabric right here. I'm going to see what that looks like. This is just a white on white. See if you can see that. No. Yeah, there you can kind of see its pattern. There we go. Right? That looks good. So it has a little bit of movement to it, but it is definitely just white. I think that will look good in here. There's no reason to suspect that it won't. So I'm going to get busy cutting that and putting that on, and I'll meet you right back here. Okay, so we decided I needed 1.25 inches for my finished inner border to be 3/4. So let's do that. I've got my edge fairly well lined up here. I took a little bit of time to do that while we were off camera. Okay, let's see if I can do this. I see people on YouTube videos just plop the ruler down, hold it with apparently no stress to their hand, no stress to their wrist or whatever, and nothing moves. And they have, like, this is an Omni grid, right? Creative Grids. It's got the non-stick spots on it, but I still need my weights. I think it must be because of my weak hands and wrists and thumbs, and the fact that all of my joints, the connective tissue inside all of my joints, move around, allow my joints to move around outside of the normal range of motion. So, and I changed my blade not too long ago, but this is several layers of fabric here. It does make a difference to have a good new blade in. I think that's all the way. Yep. Let's get another pass at that. I believe they consider this the width of fabric because my selvage is down here, so it's the width, right? Because if you go along the selvage, that's your length. I could rationalize how either one would be an accurate name. So in my mind, it's hard for me to remember. I don't think I've had any titanium rotary blades, and I think I should get some because I hear they cut better and last longer. So that's nice. As long as I don't touch them much, since I'm allergic to titanium, evidently. I just had hardware put in my body the end of 2022. Had my skull fused down to my neck, and 7 months later had to have that hardware taken out because I was allergic to it. Became infected, had a rash that was insane because I was allergic to titanium. How crazy is that? So when you hear people talk about allergies, I think it's kind of people just make fun of it. They dismiss it. They laugh it off. Like, oh, she thinks she has allergies, or she's won't do this or won't do that because of allergies. I am just here to tell you, karma is one of those things you don't want to invite because it's not fun to have allergic reactions to the strangest and most bizarre of things. Okay. Forget if I needed 3 or 4 of those. I think it was 4 minimum. I should actually stop and do the math, shouldn't I? Okay, 1 strip gives me 44 inches. So 44 times 3 is, so 120, and then 132? 132 inches, is that what I have? And how many inches do I need to do? let's bring up the calculator. Where's my calculator? There it is. $164. I have 3 of these times 44. There's 130. Okay, so let's do another one. And whatever I have left over, it's just easier to just go ahead and cut it like this, which is going to be more than I need. But I can figure out how to use those strips somewhere. I guarantee it. I know technically we're supposed to make our borders out of the length of fabric instead of the width of fabric, if I'm using the right terminology, but along the selvage. That way you can get a full strip without making any seams. I didn't do that. I wanted to make this easy on myself, and it was already folded the way it was. I could just do width of fabric cuts, and I decided I'm not going to get bent out of shape if my inner borders have some seams in them. As long as we're worried about the quilt police, we have to agree to not tell them about this offense too. I'm using dark thread on white fabric. It's horrific. It's a horrific offense. I know how much I overthink things because I like things to be done exactly the way they should be done, because there's a reason that they should be done the way they should be done. But sometimes you have to decide which things you're going to worry about at the moment and which are not. If this was a quilt for a show, I would be rethreading my machine and making sure white thread was being used. If this was for gifting to a beloved family member and you thought it would become a legacy piece, then I would be changing my thread. But even though I do hope that these quilts are meaningful for the recipients or the recipients' families, I don't really expect them to become legacy quilts. They might become legacy quilts from a different perspective. They might be something that becomes very important to that child, and as that child grows, they can remember that time in their life based off that quilt. Or if the most unfortunate thing happens and that child doesn't make it, then the family has that quilt to pass on inside their life, and it represents that child's experience to them and the journey that child went through. So I do know that just because it's not a quilt show quilt or a legacy quilt inside my family, it could still have great meaning. So as long as it doesn't look bad, I'm going to live with it, and you can barely tell. I doubt if anybody will notice. Okay, so I'm putting the top and bottom inner borders on first, which explains why my vertical strips will need to be more than just 48 inches. They'll need to account for the addition of these 2 strips being added. Putting the bottom on now. Maybe that was the top. No, it's the bottom. And I don't know why I am putting the top and bottom inner borders on first. Normally I do it right the opposite. Normally I'm putting the sides on first and putting the bottom and top borders on after that. It's kind of like putting a cap on. It seems more natural to cap off everything from top and bottom instead of to bookending it on the sides. Just like that, I'm done, all 4 sides, and we go to the ironing board now. You can see with it backlit, you can really tell how easy it is to get shadowing. I don't know about you, but when I add something as small as a strip that's going to be only 3/4 inch wide when it's finished, it seems terribly tedious to press open or to press at all. the seam that attaches said border to the body of the quilt. But it's just as important. And it's, just because what you're attaching is narrow doesn't mean that it's time to start cutting corners. Not that you would think about that. I'm sure you wouldn't, but I do. Even though I overthink everything, I'm always thinking about efficiency. Where can I cut a corner? I'm evaluating all of my rules so I can know which ones matter and what I'm doing, if it matters, if I do it a little differently. That's how I'm growing and learning, right? Evaluating all the things. And while I'm doing that, I'm trying to figure out if there's a better way, quicker way, like using this dark thread to sew these little bitty seams together. Didn't bother me at all. I only mentioned it to you guys so that if you're doing the same, you feel better about it. Every once in a while, it's okay to let some of the details not be perfect. Remind me of that one day, would you? I hear people talk about putting together a quilt in an afternoon or doing a quilt from start to finish, cutting it and piecing it and quilting it and binding it in a weekend. And I don't think I can comprehend that. I just don't move that quickly. Although some people probably think that I am fairly prolific and get a lot done. And I do. I'm not trying to dismiss my accomplishments, not one of those who's trying to dog on themselves. But I just know that I'm not a Kimberly Jolly. I see her and, what's the other lady's name? Is it Jenny Doan with the Missouri Star Quilt Company? I see them sewing and my brain doesn't work like theirs. Their machines go so fast and yet they get a perfect 1/4 inch seam. It's not like the fabric goes wavering around all over. And it might be because they're on quality machines with a quality foot. That might be part of it. I don't know. If you know the answer to that, let me know in the comments. Why is it they can go whip, whip, whip on their machine and it just be perfect? And I go slowly and make mistakes. Besides the fact they have, decades of experience that I don't have. Of course they do. I'm not negating that. In fact, I'm highlighting that. Like they're awesome. I just don't see that being a skill set that I'm going to acquire. I don't know. Maybe I do. It's also okay because there's other areas, and I hope this means something to you too. There are going to be other areas where I will get more accomplished than what they do, right? It may not be in the world of quilting, it may be in something else. You just can't compare yourselves. I know this is not a philosophizing kind of day, but I could really get into philosophizing on that topic. Because during my medical journey, I had a lot of revelations about myself and the world and people and relationships. And, it was just such an experience. No matter how hard it was, I'm very glad I went through all of it because I'm a better person, more whole person than I was beforehand. It was a very intense 12-year experience, and you can't go through stuff. Well, I guess you can go through stuff like that and not learn, but I was definitely impacted by it. And so I know not to compare myself to others and be glad for the contributions that others bring that I can learn from. And also I learned to value myself for who I am and what qualities I have They're unique to me. You know, I was created by God, and that's my personal beliefs, and for a purpose. So it's not my place to second guess those things. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Guess I shouldn't be philosophizing while I'm ironing. I'll spare you all the rest of the thoughts in my head and try to keep my fingers out of the way of the iron. Just like that, all 4 sides are done. I got lost in thought, and all of a sudden I was done. And I was complaining about doing it in the first place. All right, it looks good. So yeah, I think my new plan is I'll get these put together, but I got it before I put those together, all these individual pieces for this outer border. I got to know how long to make each section if I'm going to disperse these blocks in there amongst them. And I think what I'm going to do is make just 2 more. Instead of doing the typical cornerstones and having 4 of them, I'll have 3. So I'll have 1 here, 1 right about here, and then 1 right about here. That way it kind of keeps the eye moving. Well, as much as I would like to finish this tonight, it's just not going to happen. It's time to have some tea instead. I will give you some insights, though, to what I'm thinking about the border. I'm thinking about having 3 of these scattered about in the outer border. And then another block may be of just the orange, which is what we're using on the frame on that one. And then using that floral as the frame for this one. So there'd be 3 alike and 1 that stands out by itself. And so there's 4 altogether, but they're not used as cornerstones. They're used midstream on each side of the body of the quilt. And I think that'll just help to give some movement to the quilt. Again, this is my journey. I'm just trying to learn, trying to think about little bitty things that make a little bit of difference. This is a donation quilt. Yeah, maybe I should have finished it and, focused on it and finished it in a weekend so I could get it churned out. But that's not the only journey that's happening right now. And I'm hoping that by sharing this journey of creating donation quilts for comfort in the waiting, I might inspire somebody else to create a quilt for the children that are waiting on a transplant waiting list. And then some more people and some more people. And so my efforts are kind of being exponentially supported, and it's not just everything relying on what I'm doing. So with that, I think we're just going to call it quits for the day. That's it for this video. Thank you for being here with me. Take care, and we'll see you soon.